So first we'll start just so I can kind of see where everyone's like at. Where you're currently like works regular job. Income. How about they're in their business like full time now? Who runs a business? And then who here has like a side hustle that they're either already closed some deals and have clients or like trying to get that first one? You're like thinking about a business. This kind of thing. And then you said you're in a t-shirt business, right? Trying to back then you're in like life coaching, real estate or relationship coaching, right? Awesome. And then you're trading. Got it. And something I always start off with is like the abundance mindset, just because very easy to get stuck in scarcity. And as you grow into business, you'll realize that that's most people. And it can bother us when you're really trying to lift other people and be like, hey, I believe in you, join me on this journey. You could do something other than your 9 to 5. But something I've learned, it's taken me a while to learn, in 6 years, is that we cannot save everyone. Right? So I always want to preface that everyone has to make their own decisions. Like you could fully believe in your deal, your trading, you want to invite your buddies to the ride, but if they're not into it, like do not waste time. All you can really do is show, prove, and then keep grinding, keep improving. And if they're into it, they can kind of join later on. Right? But the scarcity mindset is something that you will literally battle with until you just fully let go and move towards abundance. Right? And few things that I coach my students when it comes to the abundance mindset. First one is really understanding like what does that even mean? Right? I use a simple framework just because I don't look at abundance as just money. Right? Sure, wealth is great, right? For you to be abundant, you're going to need a certain level of wealth. But let's not ignore it. But it also includes your health, which would be like mind, body, spirit. And it also includes your relationships. Very difficult to build a business alone. Like maybe you could be a solopreneur. Very difficult. And if you want a dream team, you're going to probably want to have good relationships with these people. And then also you're probably going to have some form of passion or purpose with fully reach abundance as a whole. So those are kind of like the 4 categories: your health, wealth, relationships, and then your purpose. Right? From there is highlighting and figuring out like what is it exactly that you want. Right? So the homework piece here, if you have taking notes on your phone, you're writing this down. If you haven't done this yet, is sit down and really flesh out what your ideal life would look like, right? How much are you spending on your health? Are you paying for a gym at Cindy Clausen down the street? Or are you trying to go to LTM? Or are you trying to go to Gold's Gym? So what does that look like? What's the input look like for your physical fitness? Then how much are you spending on food? Are you trying to move to organic food? One of my first business coaches, he said, the first thing you invest in after you've made some decent money with your income is you start buying like organic food as much as you can, right? Maybe that's what you want, you decide, but you decide, right? How much are you putting towards tithing? If you're going to church, let's say, charity a little bit. And then how much are you putting towards resources for, let's say, your mental health? I'll hire a shrink. I'm like a mindset coach. I'll work with a psychiatrist, right? That costs money. That's that first part. Then you do the same thing for your relationships. One of my own coaches shows me that, hey, it's important to have a weekly date night. Single, married, or taken, you're having set time where you have a weekly date night. How much are you spending on that weekly date night? Are you just doing like a walk, have coffee? Or are you putting together like an actual dinner date? Are you cooking for that person? Well, what does that look like? Ideally for it. Maybe you have gifts, we have family, we have friends, there's always birthdays that happen. How much are you putting towards that? Then finally you have your actual wealth. How much do you want to spend to invest every single month? How much are you putting towards your net worth? How much are you paying towards your credit cards, let's say? You want a nicer car. How much does that nice car cost per month? And you're literally breaking down line by line the exact vision plus the price of what you want. Then you can go into passions. I like to break dance. That doesn't really cost that much. Like I bought like a $20 t-shirts, pants. I think the most expensive thing I buy for dance is like my shoes. Shoes. But then, hey, maybe you want to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or maybe you want to play basketball 3 times a week. And all these things have a cost. I know some people here want to write a book at some point. There's a cost to publishing and marketing. Once you find that number, you now have something to play with. You now have some clarity because it's giving you a financial, let's call it financial freedom number, right? The amount of money that you actually would need to pull in, let's say per month or per year, so that you can live your ideal life. And sometimes you might be surprised. I've run this number with a few clients, and I've seen it as low as like $325,000. I've seen it as high as 23 mil. I've never really seen anything above the 28 mil side. And this is someone that like wants to buy like a Lamborghini and a Ferrari and all this crazy like toys. I'm not really a fan. I have an Aston Martin, cool, and I'm shit. So that's our first step. You want to get clear is what is it exactly financial freedom free. Once you have that, then you got to start basically building a runway for you to reach that goal. Because you can all look at, you can have a high paying job, sure, that's great, but you still need to invest in yourself to be able to reach that financial independence level. That's going to be your net worth. Now, before I jump into net worth and like cash flow, you guys all know like what cash flow and net worth is. Who doesn't know what cash flow or net worth is? Just that. Yeah, sure. Yeah. So quickly, your cash flow is just money in minus money out. So income minus expenses. If your cash flow is positive, awesome. That means we're moving towards that actual goal. If it's at zero, it means you're making as much as you spend. It doesn't actually mean it's a bad thing. Assuming that you're intentional with your expenses. Like if you've made your financial freedom number, you have the intentional amount that you're trying to make, or let's say spend per month, and you make that much and you spend that much, and that includes, let's say, you're investing every single month, you're paying down credit cards, you're buying some real estate, cool, then that's fine if your cash flow is net zero. It's because you're choosing to do that. I'll actually coach my students to reach for a cash flow of net zero, assuming that every single dollar has a job. You almost want to treat your dollars as little workers. If your cash flow is negative, then at least you know there's an issue. It's one of two things. Either we're not making enough, or you're spending too much. There's only two issues. You can always reduce how much you're spending. The issue with that is there's a limit. We live in a capitalist society. There's pros and cons to that. One of the cons is you're never going to reduce your expenses to zero. Very difficult, right? Unless people are taking your food and taking care of you full. If you're going to be independent enough, your expenses are going to be above zero. Increasing your income, however, there is no cap. You can continually do that, especially if you start different businesses, you have some investments, and even if you like work a 9 to 5. I'm not one of those people that will tell you like just quit the 9 to 5 right away. I don't think that's necessarily the smartest decision for most people. There's a small subset of people that if you put them in a 9 to 5, it will actually like damage their physical health and their mental health and even their spiritual health. For those people, they get it. I don't need to tell them to be okay. You got to get out of the 9 to 5 fast. They're already figured out. Okay. But for most people, 9 to 5 is an asset that's going to help you acquire more assets. Helps you get financing for real estate. Talk about that a little bit later. It'll help you just build your skills. Right? If you take a job, hopefully you're using that to get skilled to get better jobs or build a business later. So after you found your cash flow, then you want to look at your net worth. And your net worth is going to be all the assets that you own, so things that put money in your pocket, that can include cash, Could include property like this building, could include like a laptop or a cell phone if you're using it to make, let's say, trades or make money, sell stuff online or in person. And then, of course, stocks, your vehicles, private equity. And then you have liabilities or simply debt. Debt is things that take money out of your pocket. Mortgage, credit cards, line of credit, private loans. Those are taking money out of your pocket every 6 months. So you put that together, your net worth would be all the assets, things that you own, minus all the debt, things that you owe, and that will give you your total net worth. Your goal is to get your net worth to reach that financial independence number so that now you essentially can buy yourself free. Without going into too much details on what everyone's exact ideal lifestyle would be and what that entails and what that costs, a quick way that I learned back when I worked in the financial industry was you just take 20 to 25x of your current expenses, and then that should be pretty close to what's called your financial security number. That's you're able to cover your expenses for the next 20 to 25 years, or because you're getting interest on those assets, hopefully, you can draw about, in the industry, it was like around 4 to 5% while they're rate. And then you would never touch the principal. On the other side, for financial independence and freedom, you're going to do the same similar calculation, 20 to 25x of your income. I'm assuming that your income is more than your expenses at this point. And then that will give you financial independence. You basically bought yourself 20 to 25 years of a run. That's kind of an end goal. End goal up until you change your moves. We'll come back and why that's very important for abundance. But the key there is, one, you want clarity, because you want to know like where exactly are you going. The numbers. Because if you don't have a plan, your plan is essentially to fail. You're never going to freestyle your way into financial freedom. Then the next part there is, okay, you know what you're aiming for, and you have the steps. Let's get financial security, financial independence. Then the next problem comes, okay, well, what next? And that actually leads to a powerful question where I don't really think it's just about money, but the question in general that I always ask is, well, what else? Right, so what else can you do? Right? Maybe you already have a job. Maybe you're already learning about trading. Maybe you're already looking to start that first business, right? Well, the abundance mindset that I try to build and pass on to people is one where it's a balance of, well, you know your finances and what that looks like. That's the more like material version. It's like numbers, what do we actually need? But then there's the emotional side of how do you manage your emotions when it comes to money? So who here, you get paid, you're like, cool, that's exciting. I'm hyped up for that. Yes. You get paid, you're like, cool, I'm happy. Now, who, when they have an unexpected bill that they have to pay, and then they got to pay an extra $50 that they never were expecting, who's happy about that? Yeah. And you want to almost train yourself to be okay with money coming in and money coming out. Because if you think about it, like, what is money really? Like, you can go in a whole deep dive in like history of central banking and the fiat system, there's a book called History of Central Banking. If you look it up, it's very enlightening, let's say. But I won't jump into that. The key is that money is just financial energy, right? Look at the real definition of money is the exchange of it's a holder value that's used to exchange for goods and services, right? Well, that means you have to get some value, but also give some value for money to move around. And even if you just pay attention to the wording around money, right? Currency, it's like a current. You have a bank, like a river bank. You have liquid assets, such as cash, that moves very easily. And I use the analogy of like water. So, you have 3 states. You have liquid, solid, and then gaseous. So for liquid, money that's liquid form would be like cash. You can move it around, it's very easy, it passes around, always flows. And what happens if you just leave dead cash under your bed? Does it do anything really? Or it just sits there, you're losing with inflation, you're not really gaining interest, and it's just stuck in that form, right? Just like water, when you have that nice clean water, you always have to be moving it around. Then you have your solid, frozen film. Well, that's putting it into an investment. Easiest way to look at that is you're putting it into like property. But you can also consider stocks, like crypto. Yeah, it's a little bit more liquid. You can sell it, and you still gotta melt it, turn it back into cash, and then move it around. Then finally, there's the gaseous form of money. And that's where you're almost evaporating that money in hopes of creating a cloud that will rain more cash later on. That's why it's called an investment, mostly in yourself or in other people. Right? So if you invest in an employee, you get your first employee, well, that employee is not really an asset. But yeah, you would consider them an asset, but you're investing in them. They'll become their own cloud that will rain money back down onto you. You can continue to move that flow of cash. When you invest, let's say you buy a book, right? You buy a book or you get a course, you can buy some sort of mentorship, like get a life coach or something. Well, you're spending that money, but the hope is you're still trying to get a return. You're trying to get something for it. So now it's being more intentional of where you're putting your money and in what form is it. As you get a little bit more advanced into finances, then you'll start looking at how do you manage that risk, how much liquid cash do you keep, how much do you keep in a form where it's solid, it's an investment, and how much are you investing in yourself. But going back to that idea of, okay, money's a currency, you want it to go in and out, and I learned this from an investor called Ken Honda, and he says to arigato your money. So he's Japanese, so arigato means like thank your money, right? And I don't want you guys to like deify money, like it's not a god or anything, but when money comes in, you tend to already have this easy, fun, happy way of accepting it. But oh, cool, I got paid, awesome, it's good for me, right? But when you spend money, you should also try to have that same mindset. And the way that I get people kind of look at it in that different way is think about when you're spending that money. Okay, let's say I go get gas, pay some gas, exchange, pay, money leaves my pocket. Cool. Well, that few dollars, some of it is going to go to the cashier working. They're working per hour. They're going to get a small cut of that. So now that few of my dollars actually transfers to them. Now they can buy their meal, pay for their rent, live their life. Another part of that is going to go to the oil company. It's going to pay the oil employees. Those people are working hard trying to get oil out of that moving. Right? So your dollar is always moving. And it's that trust that, hey, money comes in, I get to enjoy it, I get to use it, but then it leaves me and eventually I want to come back. So now you don't have that feeling of trying to hoard for money. Because I see it all the time. People will save their entire life savings, and then when it comes to making a financial decision, then it becomes such a big thing. It's like, oh my God, I saved like 20 years of my income to buy the one house or to buy like a new car, and then there's that pain in your life. When you think about it, when you're getting a house, if you're getting a dream house, like that's amazing. If you're getting a car that you really love, like that's amazing. You're paying for your kids' college fund, whatever it is. There's always an exchange of that. Who here has seen Avatar? And I'm talking the Nickelodeon version. Might be aging myself. People say that. Yeah. So if you guys don't know, there's a show called Avatar, and then he's like a young monk, but then he goes through like it's kind of like a martial arts show. But there's a scene when you search up Avatar Nickelodeon, opening up your chakras. He goes through how this like master shows him how to like open the chakras and get the water to flow. It sounds kind of woo-woo, but one of the things I really learned is that helps a lot with money. Like if you can get into a state where while you're working, while you're living your life, you just literally have arrows of energy money coming to you and then leaving, then you have less of this feeling that you're trying to hoard it. I had this like insight when I first started real estate, I learned how to analyze cash flow. I learned how to analyze deals, and I had a few properties. And I was driving by just the Cineplex, like the movie theater down there, and I was looking at it. I was like, oh, it's kind of like everyone that walks into that building are these little people. They have green arrows going into the building, but then the building costs money to maintain. You're paying for the people, you're paying for the maintenance, you're paying for electricity, all the bills. That's money leaving. So all these buildings, all these people have like these invisible arrows of money coming against, and there's money leaving. And if you look at the people that make a ton of money, they almost get paid to exist. And that's where those investments come into play. If you invest in like dividend stocks, let's say, where you're getting paid, let's say, if you have rentals, you're getting paid every start. If you have a business that has some sort of recurring revenue, that money's still coming in. Like those green arrows coming into you, and then the red arrows are all the expenses that are. So being comfortable with both making money and spending. Because there's that saying, oh, you need to make money, you need to spend money to make money. Not necessarily true, but at a certain point, it's very like you're never just going to make money. You're going to have to spend it at some point. Most people, their issue is that they're spending more money than they ever make. And that's where you get issues with like debt and then leverage, and then all of a sudden they kind of do things. But that abundance mindset has to come first, because once you get into, let's say, business, let's say you get into like real estate and more investments, well, there's going to be a higher like threshold and risk on your head. Because now, if you have a business, it's not just all about you anymore. You have employees, you have clients. You're not going to go to your employees and be like, hey, I didn't work that hard, so I guess I gotta let you go. Like, that's a pretty tough conversation. That's on you, right? When you have investments, well, you still got to manage that. You still got to pay attention to what's happening to the market. I always say even real estate, it's as passive as you make it. We'll talk about that a little bit more. I was dealing with 4 vacancies like last month. Now I have just 1 vacancy, but hey, I still have to be at least a little bit involved, even with property management. The next thing that you want to really tap into, if your focus is on trying to become abundant, at least, or becoming that person eventually, is identifying and then eliminating limiting beliefs. I used to think, again, this was like, oh, you do it when you're younger, and then, once I get to 30, I'll never have any limiting beliefs. It's all good. Unfortunately, all our beliefs are limited. Because if you had an unlimited belief, you would like think it, and then it would just happen. But we're not God, right? And that's not really how it works, right? So it's okay to have limiting beliefs, but you just got to understand that that's a starting point, and it's gonna create a ceiling, which then you need to upgrade that limiting belief. It's kind of like upgrading your software. I mean, if you're all using Windows 98 still, like life would kind of suck. Now we have Windows like what? XP or whatever, Windows 7 or something. It's like, oh, there's always something. Or iPhones, right? It's like iPhone 15. They all had like the iPhone 1. It kind of sucks. But a few ways you can do to find your limiting beliefs. The first one is really tapping into, and we're going to stick with money here, is what were like the money stories that you were taught as a kid? I remember being about like 6, 7 years old and always seeing those houses for sale signs or sold signs, like the realtor signs, right? And I just asked my parents, like, oh, like, what are those signs? They're like, oh, no, that's just for rich people. And as a kid, I just, okay, that's about it. And I never questioned it up until I turned about 16 and I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then it really highlighted, oh, like, rich people are taught very differently than people that are like poor and middle class. Right? Like I would get in trouble. I remember getting in trouble because I had a project in like grade 2, and then they said, "Oh, what did you want in the future? You can think as big as you want." I was like, "Oh, I want a private jet." And then I drew it, take it home, and I get in trouble. And then as a kid, I'm like, I don't know what I did wrong, right? Like, okay, you just said to use my imagination. But then I had other friends that their families were wealthy, and the conversation was different. They learned about cash flow very young. I had read an article where people that are in like the top, we'll call it the 0.00%, these are like families that are billionaires, they will teach their kids to count in thousands as opposed to ones. So it's like if you're counting the water bottles or the mugs in the room, it'll be like 1,000 bottle, 2,000 bottle, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. The child is going to know that 1,000 is just a unit. Mm-hmm. But if I'm going to count to a billion, if I count 1, 2, 3, it's going to take me forever. If I count by 1,000, I'm only going to count like 1,000 times. I'll do that. And it changes how you view things. Even when I babysit kids now, I'll like show them to like count the thousands. And it's just a very different end. So first it's identifying what money stores you. What were the stories that your community taught you about money? Your friends, your family. For a lot of us, it might have been nothing. Like it might have just never been a conversation you talked about at home. From there, then it's what are some stories about rich people that you would tell? Right? I know it's very common that people say, "Oh, rich people are evil," or they don't prioritize money. Well, if you're taught that as a kid, it's going to be almost contradictory when you're an adult now between you wanting to become rich, but at the same time, like no one wants to be an evil person, right? So first identify, okay, where are these limiting beliefs coming from? At that point, then you want to find out, okay, what's a limiting belief that you, let's say, have? It could be related to money, it could not be related. I know for myself, one of the first limiting beliefs I had was that I wasn't good enough to be a teacher or an investor, and I wasn't good enough to start my own business. And I held on to that belief up until I had already hit my first 10K months. I already had 10 properties. I already had able to retire off my parents. And I still held on to those beliefs. And it would cause so much anxiety in me every single month, basically. Like it would come like end of the month, and all of a sudden I'm like freaking out, like, oh, I can't make payroll, da da da. And then I just asked them, like, what the hell's going on? Like on paper, I would consider myself to have already the quote unquote one made it. Like you're doing great, right? But for some reason I didn't feel that. And it wasn't until someone sat me down and said, "Hey Pat, like you have some limiting beliefs you're dealing with. These are things that you dealt with as a child." And it's because from 0 to 7 years old, all of us are programmable. You're living in that, it's called your theta wavelengths when you're a kid. It's almost like you're in a dream state. But any info that we take on, we will actually just, you won't question it as a kid, as a child. We'll just take it. So once you identify that, well, that's your limiting belief, then you got to ask yourself, and I learned this from Paul Jung, a famous psychologist. He was trained by Freud. But once you identify that limiting belief, then it's all about asking yourself, okay, is that belief true? Is it 100% true? You can do this exercise with yourself. It's always a good writing exercise. If you think it's true, then you ask yourself, is it 100% true? Are you 100% certain that that belief is true? Most likely it's not 100%. Cool. Then you want to stick with that belief for a second and ask yourself, okay, if you fully believe that belief, let's say I fully believe that I wasn't good enough to be a teacher, not good enough to be an investor, not good enough to start my business, well, what would my life look like at that point? Well, I wouldn't chase my passion of teaching. I probably wouldn't invest in any more real estate. I'd probably just sell early or like freak out, or next problem comes up, I just give up. And I probably won't start a business. And even if I do, I'd be stressed out thinking I'm going to ruin it every single month, regardless of the actual results. Would that be helping you? No, you self-sabotage. From there, then you can ask yourself the question of, okay, well, if you chose to believe something different, what could your life look like? And that's where you start to move closer to that ideal life that I was talking about building in the beginning. At that point, you probably prove it to yourself that one, you have a limiting belief that's not 100% true, and it doesn't serve you anymore. It probably did serve you in the past. Probably protected you from like judgment and the community ostracizing you or whatnot, or for me, maybe get in trouble from my parents, or I protected that young child version of yourself. But now you can choose a new living book. And the prompt that I use, and it comes from one of my mindset coaches, Gavin McHale, who's from Winnipeg, great guys. His prompt is you do what's called a truth is statement. So say the truth is I, you say Daniel, and then you put in the new belief. Maybe it's like I am good enough to trade stocks or crypto while building a business or while working on my 9 to 5, whatever it is. Because, and then you're stacking in a bunch of proof why that is. Because I'm learning about trading every day, because I'm studying every day, because I'm showing up to work with a good attitude, because I'm always meeting new people, because I'm going to events like this, and every single proof that you can make of why that belief is more true, you want to write it down. And as you do that, it makes it more concrete, right? Because sure, we have all heard about like affirmations, right? It's like, oh, you look in front of a mirror and you repeat these things until it becomes true. That's great. That's a step, but our brains work on proof, not promises. So if you have proof that you're actually doing these things, that's way more powerful than affirmation. Right? I could be like affirming, hey, I go to the gym every day. But if that day I don't go to the gym, well, my subconscious mind knows that I can go to the gym. And now it knows that when I just do the affirmations that I'm kind of full of shit. Right? You don't want that. The perfect place is you have alignment. Where you're doing, let's say, the affirmations, if you're into that stuff, while actually taking the action, while actually creating the proof. Does that make sense? Yeah, exactly. That's a big one. Yeah, add energy to it. Thing that a lot of people make mistakes with affirmation is they just say it. But it's like, think about if you were that person already. Remember, we go back to the ideal life. If you had that ideal life, how would that person feel saying those things? Versus like, hey, if it's just you haven't hit the gym for a while. If you say it as if you're in the state that you're in right now, well, it's going to be less powerful. Oh, yeah, I go to the gym every day. Not as powerful as like, if you're that girl or that guy that's been going to the gym for years, you're hyped about it, and you tell yourself that's the energy that you're coming from. That's going to be a lot more powerful. I think the book is Psycho-Cybernetics is a classic on that. You guys want to check out that stuff. There's The Secret too, but you can see it's a little bit more new. If you guys are into audiobooks, one that I've been reading almost every time I run and almost every time I work out is The Science of Getting Rich. I think it's by Wallace D. Wattles, if I remember properly. It's about 2 hours on YouTube, and it's really good because it breaks down step by step of how to think and act as that person before you become that person. So I'll switch over to a little more basics. Before I jump into that, questions, comments, critiques, concerns? That's a good one. Every time I run, it's good. See, so on the real estate side, first is you want to understand like what is your actual goal? Like if real estate is going to be a piece of what you're trying to do. Because for myself, I never thought I would be an entrepreneur or get into real estate. My whole story was, parents came from the Philippines, immigrated here, and I was born here. And my mom was an accountant for a little bit, then didn't really like the office environment. I was not the best for her mental health, and then she ended up becoming happier working at Tim Hortons. And my dad worked sometimes one, sometimes two jobs at a time. Right. And at around 17, I got introduced to the financial industry, and the job offer was to help people with their finances. But at 17, I got my T4 after working because I worked at McDonald's, and I was like, cool, I made all this money, but I kept none of it. So cool, I made $16,000 this year. Awesome. Go to my bank account. It was like $75 there. What happened? And it was the first time I went through every transaction. And I realized I was working McDonald's to eat McDonald's. Okay, cool. That's awesome. Just funding it. Yeah. So, my McDonald's, eat it, go Cineplex, go watch the movie from there. Then I realized, okay, well, I can't help people with their finances if I don't know a lick about my own finances. But that put a fire under my ass to really figure it out. So I read every book I could. I started going to events like this. Every time there was like a real estate event, I knew that real estate was connected to money, so I would just go. And I eventually, after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, kind of realized, oh, cool, like there's other ways to make money. Now, I had the limiting belief still that I could not get into real estate. So I did everything else but that. So I learned dividend investing. It took me about 2 years, and then eventually had enough to get like lunch. And I remember specifically, I was living in Quebec. I was teaching English there, and I was like, okay, well, I don't get paid for another few days. I'll just like skip lunch there. I just paid rent, sent money to my parents. Okay, well, whatever. I'll skip lunch. I'll have dinner. It's fine. As I'm taking my walk, just outside, I get a message on my phone, and it says, oh, like, your dividends from Forest Entertainment. I was like, oh, cool. Look at it. And I had like $15.75. And I was pumped. Like, it was probably like, to this day, better than any real estate deal ever closed, any like high ticket client or whatever. Like that $15.75. Just went to Tim Hortons, got a soup and sandwich, and it was the best meal. Because in my head, I was like, cool, like this was from 2 years of investing, right? Looking back on, okay, yeah, $50. At the time, like, it was a powerful experience. Like, yeah. On the right journey. Yeah. And that's what taught me, okay, this passive income is a thing. Then I started teaching like dance. I was teaching break dance. And luckily I had a director, and she taught me all the rules of like, hey, like this is how you do your write-offs, this is how you do your taxes, when you drive here, track your mileage. And she was the one kind of teaching me all those things about business, just kind of mentoring. And that was like the active business side. Then I learned, oh, I could actually lend people money. So I did a little bit of private lending. And I built up like 10 other income sources. And I said, hey, Katie, well, the last one's real estate. And this is when I was still working in the financial industry. So I'd written a book called How to Never Be Broke Again. And I'd run a bunch of like back testing to make sure these are 10 principles of just how to never be broke. So I kept seeing families deal with this kind of stuff, right? And in that book, I haven't done a new version, but it even says like it explains rental income, but then there's like little fine print that says, I actually don't own any rentals right now. I'm working to get this. Within the next year, I'll should have a next rental. And I was at a real estate training. It was a free version. It was a free training that I actually got invited to, and they had a door prize. So, we have like Manitoba socials, social tickets. Right? The door prize was a 3-day training on negotiations. Right? Talk about the importance of negotiating a little bit in a second. But I was like, oh, cool. Here's the number. And I was showing like my girlfriend at the time, she invited me. I was like, oh, look, I never win these things. Oh, right now. I was like a joke. I'm playing each number as they call it out, and I am winning. I was like, oh, cool. Like, I get to go to this free training now. Awesome. But I'm in university, so I have to tell my profs, like, okay, like, I'm not going to be in class, da-da-da. I was like, they're like, oh, are you sure if you miss one more class, you're not going to graduate, be a teacher? I'm like, oh, I won't miss any other classes. So, once in a lifetime type of thing. The full training was like $3,000. So for a university student, like, that's a lot. It's a full year tuition. So I ended up going there and changed my life. It was more not just teaching, but it was like experiences. And it was, you would do negotiations. So let's say I have a buyer and you're a seller. You have a secret sheet that you're looking at. So you have like 5 things that you want, and I have a secret sheet that I'm trying to sell my house. I want these 5 things. We'll negotiate, there are exchanges, what was the deal, and then we'll compare. Whoever wins gets real money. So everyone had like basically $100 of chips per day. And if you won, then you got the other person's like $10 basically. So that is for real money. Smaller numbers. At the end though, we got to set our goals. I had written down my goal of like, okay, I'm gonna close a real estate deal in the next year, or else I'm gonna sell my car, I'm gonna bus everywhere. And like my teaching job was like 45 minutes there, 45 minutes back. And what that taught me was kind of that abundance mindset of like urgency is actually a good thing. Right? You can accomplish a lot with some urgency. If you have no urgency, good luck accomplishing your goals. Fast forward to a year, it's like counting down. I have a few days left. Luckily, was able to close the deal. Learned how to close private deals at that point, and then put my whole life savings in that deal. Sold all my stock. I was like, okay, well, I got on my first house with 5% down. I had two roommates at the time. Now what? Well, now stop. It's taken me like 5 years to save that money. That was for 5% down. If you guys don't know, at the time it was for a rental, you need 25% down. So, okay, it's going to take 5 times as long. Cool, I make better income now, let's say, but it'd still take a while. But now you only need 20% down, so it's a little bit easier for COVID, but it's still a chunk of money. And that's where I just decided, okay, you just got to find out. I just need to find someone who's done this, get a mentor, get them to teach me. I've already been learning on YouTube. I've already listened to all the podcasts, read all the books, know how to analyze deals, but like I just don't know like how do people get money for this? They just work or have a business or something. So type on Facebook, looking for someone in Winnipeg who's a real estate investor. I'll pay for dinner. I just want to like see how you got started. This guy messages me, says, speak to me in French. And I'm like, how does this guy know I speak French? I see he went to the same university as me. Oh, that's weird. And I look more at his profile. He went to the same university in Quebec that I like visited and studied at. Oh, it's so weird. Built a relationship with him. And yeah, he was a teacher too. He was a counselor for 15 years. And he just said, hey, like, I know you're still in school for teaching. Once you graduate, do the house hack. It's basically what I did. And then come back out. So he reached out to them after I did close that first deal. I was like, hey, I don't know what to do. What's the price for mentorship? I'm open to it. Like, I just want to learn. Gives me a price. I was like, okay, cool. Then I actually found 3 other friends. And this is, again, come back to the question of what else. So the price he gave me, like, I didn't have it. It was like $14,000. I just graduated. I was making okay money, but I didn't have $14,000 bank account. And again, I just asked him, okay, what else? And I asked him, like, oh, if I get a partner, can we split? He's like, oh, yeah, no problem. And in my head, I'm like, oh, this guy's a teacher. I know he mentioned that he only charges because people don't do anything unless they have some skin in the game. I was, oh, it's just charging just so I actually do something. But I'll probably do it like for free. I'm not going to ask for free, but if I get more people. So, oh, like, I have connections at the university. Can I get us a classroom? Can I get 2 friends in there? And he's like, yeah, no problem. He split it between 3 of you guys. I was like, can I get 4? He's like, yeah, sure. And I was like, can I get 8? He's like, no, that's too crazy. And also you have 24 hours to like figure this all out. And I was like, oh crap. So I get on my phone, and again, I'm just telling myself, okay, what else can I do? So I call all my friends. But like, someone has to be interested. Right? Like I know people want to get into real estate. This stuff isn't taught in school. Sure, it's taught online, but it's very general because it has to be, right? Like, we can't give you specific advice or education at that point. And then, yeah, 4 of us got together, learned from this guy, and we were able to just learn the creative financing for real estate. So put all together, for anyone here that wants to get into real estate, first part is just ask yourself, okay, why? Like, why do you even want to get into this? Right? Is it for family? Is it just because I want to make a boatload of money? And that's okay, right? Don't let anyone ever shame you just because you want to make more money. And get it, media likes to push all our money back. But if that motivates you and that puts a fire in your ass, go for that. That's okay. Maybe it's because you have a business idea that you want to start and you want to use that real estate to like help fund that. Right? What's that reason behind getting into real estate? Because full transparency, it's a simple business, but it's not. Right? You will run into issues. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when, right? Whether it's going through a lawsuit, it's going through some tenant issues, going through a trashed property, going through a flip that doesn't sell, going through some black swan event like COVID, or even, interest rates are getting high, you almost fall out. These are all potential problems. The beauty is that there's all solutions to it. And a lot of solutions actually ends up becoming money. Like, the beauty about real estate is money solves all your real estate problems. All your life problems, money can't necessarily solve. So you'll be left off with what I like to call the philosophical wealth disaster, which is an upgrade. Now, once you figure out, okay, what are your goals with that? Why do you want to get into real estate? Then that should lead you towards what type of real estate is actually going to fit your goals. Because everyone here is different. If you're someone that wants, let's say, more cash in a faster amount of time, and you also want to like replace your job, if you actually want to be someone who gets, let's say, into construction, flipping is probably what's going to be the best case. Because then you can have a large profit. You're shooting for 20 to 40 grand at the end of each deal. That's where I'm usually comfortable with, and sure students with that. Just because a flip could take, 2 months, if not even more. If you only make 20 grand over 2 months, like 10K a month is pretty good. But if you make 10K only over 2 months, 5K is kind of like a regular job. That's why I say, if like you want to replace your job, flipping might be the route. It's going to be more active. Now, if you're someone that wants to do it on the side, you want to learn real estate, but you're not really sure if you want to like become a landlord or go fully into flipping, you want to learn some fundamentals and be able to like at least get your foot in the door, well, maybe wholesaling is where you start. So wholesaling different from flipping. So flipping is you actually buy the house, renovate it, then sell it to someone else. Wholesaling is you're just selling the contract. So let's say Hanny comes to me and he says, hey, Pat, I got a house. You want to buy it? I was like, sure, I'll buy it for 200 grand. Awesome. Sign the paperwork. Then I can take that paperwork and then find someone else. And like, hey, I want to buy the house from you. You have it for 200. I'll pay you 5,000 on top of that. Now I'll buy the house. So they cut me a check for 5 grand. Now that contract is theirs. But they will close on Hanny's house. So I never actually closed or owned that property. I was almost like a middleman. It's not exactly like being a realtor. A realtor is actually a trademark word. So you can never call yourself a realtor because you're not. You're a private wholesaler. Now, if you want to build that generational wealth, you don't mind doing this for 10, 20, maybe even 30 years, and then have real estate as part of your retirement, well, now you can start looking at buy and hold real estate. Especially if you love your 9 to 5 or you love your business and you're like, hey, I'm just going to take my extra income, flop it into this house, don't have to do much renos, I'll do maintenance over time, but it's not like you're doing an initial investment into it on top of just your down payment. Cool, you do the buying. And then finally, one of the last strategies, one of my favorites, is the BRRRR method, which is the buy, renovate, rent, refinance, and repeat. It's combining buy and hold with flipping. Because now you're buying a house, you're still renovating it as if you're flipping. Maybe your renovations aren't as nice. Maybe you're putting like butcher block countertops or laminate as opposed to quartz. Maybe you're just putting, I've got sticker backsplashes instead of like an actual backsplash. Because the point of it is to become a rental after, you put a tenant in, and then you do what's called a refinance, which is you get a new loan, you get a new mortgage, because you've increased the value, and you pay off the old mortgage, and then maybe pay off any of the borrowed funds if you're raising capital. And that allows you to use the same down payment over and over. The beauty about that strategy is it teaches you all the other ways indirectly, because it's still showing you some fundamentals of renovating homes, whether you're going to do it yourself or hire it out, you know what strategically reno. I like to aim for a kitchen, bath, flooring, and paint. Because for every dollar you put in, you're probably adding another $3 to $4 a value. So if I spend 5 grand on the kitchen, I'm adding about 20 to 25 grand to the whole profit. It's a good return. And at the same time, if you want to do the private real estate route, well, now you can learn a little bit about wholesaling. Any deals that make sense for you, awesome. Like, hey, this is a good BRRRR. I'll keep that deal. And hey, if it's not a good BRRRR, maybe it's just a good first-time house for someone, you can wholesale that. So it teaches you the different ways of real estate versus if you just learn flipping, you might learn a little bit of wholesaling, but not so much the buy and hold side, not so much the BRRRR side. And then also if you learn just buy and hold, well, you're not really learning wholesaling, you're not really learning, it's flipping. So it all starts with really making this about what are your goals, what strategy suits you, and what's going to help you get to that next level. And then the last part to put this kind of all together is always remember that real estate and these investments, they're vehicles to get you to that ideal life that you're talking about. I've yet to meet someone that actually loves real estate. I've met people that love their business. Right? But I'm in the coaching space, you're in the coaching space. I love teaching, that's why I do that. But like real estate, do I really love it? Not really. Again, I've never met someone that's like completely in love with real estate, but they love the benefits. They love the tax benefits. They love the freedom that comes with it. I know some investors that honestly, they just wanted to be able to travel. So they bought a few rentals and then they go to these like events out in Mexico or Hawaii for real estate events. And then they just end up just partying them. But it's a write-off for them. It's like education. Like go on a cruise. But it's like use that vehicle to get the thing that you want. That's good. Yeah, because then you want to reverse engineer it. Because then you don't want to get stuck in that thing. And maybe you can always transfer these skills to another business. Like I never thought that I would like monetize my social media. But because of doing real estate and kind of documenting this, more people kind of reached out. They're like, oh, can you help me with like finances and real estate? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like I can teach bio. I don't know if I can teach this stuff. And my first like client ever, he's like, well, I'll give you tattoos for life. Teach me what you know. I was like, cool, I'll take that deal all day. And within 27 days, he was able to close his first deal and a company found out and you're like, oh, cool, we'll hire you. And eventually we started our own thing to like, we wanted to make it more like in-field training. Because like everything was moving online, especially with like COVID and stuff, which is great. Like you can learn quite a bit of real estate online and like you do like one-on-ones on Zoom, let's say. But there is power in like going to a property with a mentor or going to a private deal, having someone negotiate on your behalf, just so you get to see what that looks like. If that goes far, there's a reason the master and apprentice relationship has lasted for so long. And I think we're slowly kind of going back to that. And that's why we want to do things a little different with the life realistic. And the key there is really just figure out what's that ideal life? How do you build into your own abundance mindset? Continue to delete your limiting beliefs. Learn some real estate if that's going to be part of your goals. Because your real estate can be an extra income source that supplements a little bit of that risk that you take otherwise. Right? So let's say you have some employees, great, some of that real estate can pay some of those employee wages. Now it's a little bit less risk for you. And at the end, never forget that real estate, if you decide to go with that, it's okay to eventually cash out it. Or it's okay to eventually, sell a few so that you can start this other business that you're doing. It gives you optionality. You have way more options if you have a few doors under your portfolio than if your only option is, I got no doors, how do I get it? So yeah, quickly, if you guys wanted to learn more about this kind of stuff, always reach out to me. We do a lot of like group and one-on-one kind of mentorship. It usually starts with, we just build you a custom real estate roadmap. That way you know exactly what you need to do specifically with your goals, the first 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. From there, we show you how to do what's called market mastery so that you know how to market for deals, get leads and properties that fit your goals again. Because there's going to be deals that make sense for me, but don't make sense for you, and vice versa. We want to make sure it's about your deals. I don't want to compete with you in real estate. We want to be able to collaborate within our own. Then we show you how to leverage using maximum efficiency. What that means is you'll learn how to use creative financing, how to use other people's money, raise capital, but also how to have leverage in your time so that we can save you 10 to 15 hours a week. And then you also have capital to close on these deals. Because a lot of people find that they're almost too busy to do something else. You want to solve that problem too. Then we also give you guys the rapid ROI system. So just quickly, you get all the documentation, all the pre-approved lawyer docs, you get promissory notes. You basically get a full kit for real estate that's done for you already. And all you got to do is just run with it and use those resources. And then finally, my favorite part is we want to help you build your indestructible team. So all that means is We want you to have freedom. Like, my goal is not for you to become a professional landlord that has to take a call at 12:30 at night to change a toilet. We don't want that. We want you to be able to have property managers, contractors, people on your team that they will help you grow and scale your business so you can actually enjoy it free. But yeah, that's something you guys want. Just reach out to me. Whether you find me on Instagram, I'll connect later on as well. But yeah, hope that makes sense. Documents are will be based. Documents are Manitoba based. We do coach all across Canada at this point. So we'll be building out those documents and interactions across Canada. Not US just yet. I coach people in the US. It's a lot more of like they're specifically needing like scaling and the capital results. Yeah, exactly. And then when it comes to like the new real estate investors, I find there's already